Report, Dr. MacNeal.
Thank you, Madam President. On the curriculum report, we have one action item. Request approval to purchase Wit and Wisdom for grades 3 to 5 core ELA resource and professional development for 10 elementary buildings. Total cost not to exceed $375,000.
Do I have a second? Second. Is there any discussion or questions about this item?
Madam President.
Dr. MacNeal.
Dr. Chance, I'd like to have a discussion about Wit and Wisdom. I'd like to thank all the parents who came to give public input. From my count, we had 18 parents. 12 of the 18 are asking us to consider not approving Wit and Wisdom, and 6 of the parents are asking us to approve Wit and Wisdom. That says to me that parents thought enough of the issue to come to a board meeting and express their concerns regardless of the way they think. I hate to say feel, because this is a thinking thing as well as a feeling thing, the way they think about the program. We know, and I think I heard from most parents, that their objection seems to be matching the reader to the text and the task. Is this topic, is this theme, is this book appropriate for this grade level? I think I heard that we're all in favor of challenging our students and having challenging text. Where we're not seeing eye to eye, perhaps, is on the content of some of the books and the age appropriateness for our the particular students. Now, I was frankly unaware until I was made aware last meeting of some of the issues around Wit and Wisdom, because in December we did approve the resources for grades K, 1, and 2. So I stand remiss in my duty in that I did not look into the program adequately at that time. So I've not been able to read every book, nor do I think it's my job to read every book. But I took a cursory look at grade 1, a couple of texts. And while I might disagree with people who saw an issue with, for example, Brave Irene, I don't dismiss that they have an issue with it. The same with, forget the title, about the seahorse. And is that information, I'm assuming, factually accurate? Do seahorses actually do those things? I don't know. Sometimes we see something in print and we actually believe that it's true. Well, I don't know, because I don't know anything about seahorses. So my concern when I looked into the text more was really about the qualitative and the quantitative evaluation of the text. So it's one thing to say we're going to have complex conversations about a text, but children only learn to read by reading the material. So I'm unsure how a book that is leveled, let's say use the word leveled, for grades 2 to 5 can be read by a typical first grade student. And I understand that some texts might be read aloud by the teacher. I get that, and that's appropriate, and that does stimulate challenging conversation. But I would like to know, and if it would be possible for you to, I don't know about answering now, but the texts that children will actually read and what the levels are of those. I don't want children to just listen to things or to pair read or to echo read. Those have no substance in the scientific reading research. So what are the texts that they will actually read? Can we get different perspectives from not only educators, but parents who are here on the different texts? I know that there is a document where another district kind of evaluated the text. Okay, we're going to use this one. Kids will read this. We're going to change things up a little bit with this text. And I don't even know if we're going to use this other text. So I think it would be helpful. Somebody mentioned, I have it written down, but to find it quickly, the transparency piece. There is a lack of trust in our district, among our people. We can just speak to Downingtown. And I don't want people to be distrustful of this district because I love it. I worked here, I live here. So if we are fully transparent, can we, I don't know, am I putting you on the spot to provide that kind of information now?
So I think, so let me just say a couple of things. The first being, this is a process, I don't know how much I described at the last meeting, but that began for us as a school district back in really middle to end of 1920 and really began in earnest at the start of 2021 with the formation of a committee of folks to look at a variety of resources following a complete rewrite of our ELA curriculum. We began with really 9 different potential resources, relying somewhat on ed reports. I encourage you to check that out. But of those 9, we looked at ed reports and looked at those reviews. Narrowed it down at the time to 3 different resources, and really spent the entirety of 2021, yes, during the pandemic, investigating these resources on a variety of levels, having monthly meetings as a committee representative of teachers, literacy specialists, administrators, et cetera. We actually did virtual visits with 3 different school districts, 2 of which utilized Wit and Wisdom, another district that used a different resource called Schoolwide. And it was really towards the end of 2021 that our committee made the decision to move in the direction of Wit and Wisdom as a result of all of that work. It was really towards the fall of 21-22, so just earlier this fall, where we really became aware of some of the national attention that Wit and Wisdom started to get, which is really what I was referencing last month. And I think it's appropriate to mention as well that even in our agenda setting, I came to the board and was transparent about the fact that there was some national attention being paid. And in the midst of that, we did some investigation of our own. I mean, our ELA supervisor and ELA curriculum leader have been meeting almost bi-weekly with great minds on the K2 side of things to make sure that the texts and all of those resources and curriculum materials that are provided align with the PA standards and are a fit. So when we do begin to implement, our teachers are prepared, et cetera. Again, it's important to note that we haven't started teaching any of this yet. The books themselves, even K2, were just recently delivered. We're in the process of unpacking. Teachers don't even have them in their hands yet. The plan all along was to, towards the end of this school year, put those books in the hands of our teachers so they could read them all, so that they could understand what it would look like to teach each of the modules with the suggested text and make any necessary alterations as a result. If we move forward with the purchase of 3 through 5, the plan will be similar. And I believe, as I mentioned last week as well, we'll be taking all of next year to do much of that work, and implementation would be the following year. With all of that said, we do stand behind to a pretty significant degree the content and the topics. We understand, as you mentioned, Dr. MacNeal, that parents have different perspectives, and we've investigated ourselves. I've read many of the books themselves. I've had parents reach out with the specific books that were in question. And so from a thematic standpoint, even the ones that are seemingly concerning in K2 primarily, they do align with the instructional outcomes. So you mentioned the Seahorse book. Actually, that unit is around animals and the different natures of animals. And so, and that book itself actually speaks to life cycle and actually being able to describe the life cycle of an animal as a kindergarten standard in our science PA standards. And so, again, from that standpoint, we're fairly confident that this is the way to go. In response to your question around Lexile levels and maybe in general around transparency, we heard loud and clear last week that we might want to look at, for example, providing public review of the text. And so we've begun gathering those, and I believe are prepared to do so. And so I think maybe what might be most prudent, given what you just mentioned with respect to transparency, is perhaps tabling the motion until May and providing you, the board, with information around Lexile levels and alignment of the books to grade levels, et cetera, making sure we get those books on public display, and then having a vote in May. I wouldn't suggest pushing it much later than May. The dollars dollars that we've allocated are for this school year in 21-22. It's our capital funds. And so if we fail to make the purchase prior to June, then we won't have those funds available to do that next school year. But certainly we could wait until May to make sure that you as the school board are fully informed. And to your point, we could be as transparent as we can be with parents, because we're certainly not trying to hide anything in terms of what we're trying to do with our ELA curriculum, which is simply to help students be able to read and write.
Have we, Dr.
I would like to ask that we all treat each other with respect, including our administration. Thank you.
Dr. Chance, have we ever, I know when I was in charge of curriculum, I did not. So I'm asking you, in light of the way things are today, have we considered including parents on a curriculum review team? You mentioned spending a year doing this. Now, this is in hindsight, but
So when you use the word curriculum, that can mean different things for different people. So I'll really describe two ways I think that we'd like to involve parents in our curricular processes. The first being curriculum, when we talk about the curriculum documents. And so you've heard us talk a lot about our curriculum review cycle. And one way that we're looking to engage parents in that process is by having them participate really from a career component. And in our research phase of our curriculum, we're actually entering that shortly here with social studies, and getting members of our community who might work in a particular field, who might be able to inform us about ways that we want to make sure our curriculum prepares our students for life beyond school. And so that's, in terms of our curriculum document writing, that's something that will engage parents in. At the same time, of course, once curriculum documents are complete, they'll be presented to the board at a public meeting much like this, and parents would have the opportunity to review those documents between committee of the whole and school board. When it comes to curriculum resources, which is sort of what we're talking about now, right? Textbooks, sometimes those words become synonymous, but textbooks themselves. One of the goals that we've had as a curriculum department as we enter our curriculum review cycle is really to embed a public review process to our curriculum documents prior to approving them. Not something that exists in our policy currently, has been a goal for us, and frankly the goal was for end of next year to make sure that's a component of our processes, because that's the year we'll be looking at approving resources associated with social studies, which is the first curricular area to move through our curriculum review cycle. Again,
right, then let me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Sure.
let me then change what I said. You mentioned narrowing the choice of resources down to 3. So at that point in time, that would have been an excellent time to have some parents come in and take a look at the 3 choices and hear or see what the pros and cons from the experts, the professionals, the educators were for each of the resources. Because you hear that people don't get the difference between a text and a curriculum, because the thinking is you have the text, which does happen, and people use that, people being teachers, some teachers, use that book as the textbook, as the curriculum rather. So I think this is a new world we're living in. It's not the world when I was in, your seat. That's not the world I lived in, but it's a different world. And I think we owe it to our public to hear and not just listen actively, not just dismiss people that disagree with our line of thinking, because we have to represent all of the families and the children of all of those families in our district. So if we give them, the parents, an opportunity, and if you don't want to review it, fine. But if you're interested in seeing what the 3 are that we narrowed this down to, you're welcome to come and give them the specifics, because we know that we have at least 18 people who would show up.
Sure. Yeah, I agreed wholeheartedly from that perspective. And, it's always a double-edged sword. And we're going through it right now with school start times, for example. You invite folks out and get perspectives. And at the end of the day, sometimes a decision is made that doesn't always align with everyone's perspective. And so sometimes folks feel dismissed or jaded as a part of that process. But at the same time, to your point, we want to involve our parent community. We want to involve as many folks as we can in this process. I think in hindsight, there are 2 things. One, perhaps we could have done a better job of updating folks throughout our process over the course of the last 2 years. But I'd be remiss if I, again, didn't mention that it was in the midst of the pandemic that we were doing much of this work. And so certainly there were other things that took priority. But again, in hindsight, maybe something our department could have done a little better. And also, too, I just want to highlight again that this is going to be atypical of our processes moving forward with respect to our curriculum review cycle. This is still something that's sort of being done to clean up, if you will, sort of some of the things that were happening prior to establishing the consistent system that we have in place now. So not something that we should, a situation we should find ourselves in again, really at all in the near future, and certainly over the course of the next 6 years.
Well, a rule I live by is when you know better, you do better. So I think that's what we have to do. Now we know better, so we all need to do better for our people. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions?